So as you all know, he's the head of the Institute for Policy and Strategy, IPS, chairperson of the Herzliya Conferences in the Reichman University. I simply have to say a few words. This is your water, by the way. It is yours. You have half a canteen waiting for you here. And the story goes like this. I have a tip for every one of you. When Amos speaks, take out your notes and a pen and jot down everything he says, because whatever he says is worth note-taking. He's one of the people who know how to explain the Middle East in half an hour, make everyone understand what he says, and he brings in a few new words to the Israeli lexicon. Hamastan and Hezbollastan are new words in the Hebrew language, coined by this Major General, and now everyone is using those words, but no credit is being given to him. So I simply want to thank Professor Reichman for his wisdom of bringing this Major General to us, because the added value of Amos Gilead at the Reichman University is totally so hard to evaluate and quantify. We talked about this yesterday. So what we have here is hundreds of students who study with him and study from him. What is happening? Now you must notice that he's a personal friend of so many leaders in the Middle East, and I think that they get along with him mostly because of his honesty, his courage, but also his incredible sense of humor. One day I'll tell you about WhatsApps we exchange at 1 o'clock in the morning in jokes, because it is great fun joking with you, and he even taught me a few words in Arabic. Amos, the floor is yours.
Good morning. First of all, the first line item in my will, it says, Jonathan will eulogize me. What you just saw now is a preparation for that eulogy. I don't know what the date will be. So I'm truly thrilled to be standing here, because I think there's such a significant representation here, respectable representation, Professor Reichman and the entire senior faculty, and of course ambassadors from Arab countries. That always warms my heart, and I'll soon talk about that. And of course, from Europe, the ambassador of the EU and the US ambassador, people from the entire system come here in order to discuss and address issues of national security. We decided on the name for this conference a year ago, policy and strategy in times of in an era of uncertainty. We had a hunch that this would happen. Today, the unofficial title of this conference is 911. You know, when you call 911, all emergency and relief services come. And this is what I'd like to elaborate on following the fascinating overview given by Professor Reichman. I'll talk from the angle of national security. You'll hear about some of the most powerful leaders of this country, the head of the Intel Directorate, Chief of General Staff, Minister of Defense. They'll each present different angles. I don't know which ones. But let's get straight to business. We are at a junction which is unprecedented in history. We are at the peak of our power as we face ever-broadening threats. And the central threat is the Iranian threat. Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, which used to be one of our biggest friends, has become one of our worst enemies. It's not just our enemy, it's the enemy of Sunni Islam, of the Arab world. And as for Israel, in contrast to the Arab world, they are determined to destroy and annihilate the state of Israel. Jews can live in a friendly way, just as they do in Iran, according to the Sharia interpretation, but not in the state of Israel. And a lot of people find it difficult to understand. What do they want from us? This is what they want from us. No time to get into the details. Just take it as a given. I've had the honor to present to the Prime Minister back in 1996, in the previous century, and I call it BC, before COVID, because I don't want to see for how many years I've been involved in this field, but I need to expose it. And I spoke about the Iranian threat to the then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he adopted the Iranian threat as Israel's main challenge, definitely under his leadership. So where are we at today? Today, the Iranian threat is progressing despite all the efforts. What do the Iranians want to do, and where are they heading? The first item is nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran in combination with a radical extreme ideology. This is the only threat which I determine as an existential one. We can define all threats as existential threats, but this is the only one because the implication of that is terrible, and I don't want to get into the details. It's terrible. Now, Iran is in a stage that it could enrich up to 96% enriched uranium based on its decision, and that is the component still needed for nuclear weapons. And we heard in the American Congress that once they decide, it's a matter of several months. According to our estimate, it's 2 years, but there isn't that much difference between 6 months and 2 years in the history. Definitely in the history of the Middle East, it's a blink of an eye. So the fact that they've reached such a situation that they decide when to cross the Rubicon, and they haven't done so for various reasons and considerations, that's quite astounding. Number two, diverse ballistic capabilities, armed drones, cruise missiles, rockets, missiles, a huge pool, and they're trying it all out now with the Ukrainians. And we need to think what will happen when they finish there. They're just preparing the ground for their war against us. And, you know, with their chutzpah and audacity and violence, they are murdering Ukrainians without any reason. I mean, there is no disagreement or dispute between Iran and the Ukraine. That attests to their murderous nature. And there's also a popular uprising there. The recent uprising was very impressive, led by some very courageous women, but it was run over with terrible torture and brutality and cruelty. And unfortunately, this regime is stable. Another thing is terrorism, cyber terrorism. They're increasing their terrorist activities here. And another important thing, they're creating an axis of evil that includes countries that are falling apart, into which they enter like a pest that attacks the palms from inside. And just like the Lebanese cedar tree, they are eating it from within. It is a bankrupt country, Lebanon, and Hezbollah, which is growing from within, is strong. It currently has 150,000 rockets. I won't be surprised if they even have more, but that's the number we know of. Syria, if Hafez al-Assad would have seen what his son did to Syria, he would have turned, around in his grave. With Bashar al-Assad, he gave Syria to the Iranians and to the Russians so that they will save him from destruction. He murdered, he killed 500,000 people. Half the population was exiled from their homes, and now he's accepted to the Arab League in Riyadh. These things are quite amazing. Now, Iran itself was under sanctions. They are now coming out of this isolation the way they see it. They are making a strategic alliance with Russia, and they're forming strategic relations with China. Now, where's Israel? Israel has tremendous power, tremendous military power. We have a very sophisticated air force. We have air defense capabilities and protection from missiles, which we constantly see. We have amazing intel capabilities. Look how far we've come. They took 500 kilos of documents from the archives of the nuclear weapons, one of the most secretive places in the heart of Tehran, and they managed to bring it here to Israel. But there's one terrible thing that's happening to us. I call it the regime coup. I don't call it a revolution. I don't call it a reform. It's a coup. And the purpose of this is to turn us from a successful, flourishing democratic country to a failing, weak country. That's a strategic warning. If I were in the Intel Directorate, I would have said this is a strategic warning. Let's see what's happening. Our might is based on very impressive military power that I've just detailed. And alongside that, we have political, diplomatic, strategic power, first and foremost. These are our strategic ties with the U.S. With all due respect to various politicians and ministers, and I don't even wish to mention them by name, who say to the American ambassador, mind your own business, or who do you think you are? That's what they say to the U.S. It's such stupidity. It harms Israel. can we, for example, attack in Iran without strategic coordination with the U.S.? And I'm not getting into any military secrets here, no, but if the President of the U.S. does not meet with the Prime Minister of Israel, it's it's a very significant dent and harm to our capabilities, to our strength. And there is wonderful collaboration between the Israeli security establishment and the U.S. and the Air Force, but there isn't any alternatives to a strategic relationship between an Israeli Prime Minister and a U.S. President. Strategic coordinations are only made on that level. And the President of the U.S. says the special relationship, I'm translating him, it's not that this is what he said explicitly, but this is what is implied. The special relationship between the huge U.S. and Israel is a basis which is called shared values. That's a code name for democracy. If we do not have a democracy here in Israel, then our ties with the U.S. will be harmed. And all these illusions about regime change, administration change in the U.S., these are dangerous illusions. Nobody knows what's actually going to happen there in January. And I can tell you for sure that in January 2025, there will either be a Republican president or a Democratic president. That's it. All our wonderful intel cannot let us know anything more than that. And if there's a third option, I can tell you that he won't be elected. But without this special relationship with the U.S., which is global spanning, it's not just the direct relationship, it's the strategic backing. If we continue with this regime overall, we will reach an abyss. Number two, we are a startup nation. It's quite amazing what's happening here. And if we don't have a democracy that defends the system with basic rights, this money will come out of here. Without these immense investments, we lose that edge, and that's a great witness. Our extra currency that we've aggregated will run out if we are fostering, these studies that lag behind. If they think that 2 + 2 is too much of secular studies, and what do they study in Iran? They study physics and chemistry, and we're going to raise at our expense here. It reminds me that famous comment of Marx that capitalism will kill itself by financing the rope from which it will be hung, and that will be a terrible disaster if our educational system goes bankrupt. And in this university, which is a pioneering university, but throughout the university, throughout the Israeli academia, without democracy, we won't have an academia. What will we turn into? Hungary, Poland? Thank you very much. I want to stay democracy, and we're going in this path with respect to education, economy, technology. The head of the Authority for Innovation gave a strategic warning. 200 economists gave a strategic early warning. So what are we waiting for? The writing is on the wall. Our power relies on that. And I'd like to add something else to that. Israel has managed to develop with the Arab countries amazing strategic relations, and I've had the honor to be involved in that, including the Sisi, the president, and with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And when I see that there's a minister without the map of Jordan behind him, as if Jordan doesn't exist, it drives me crazy. The strategic ties, I don't know if you understand the depth of this. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, it's not that we're doing it a favor, but rather there's a mutual interest. We have strategic depth. Without the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the way it's built today, our national security in the most deepest sense will be severely harmed, and I can elaborate on how it will happen, but I don't want to go beyond my time. Without ties, strategic ties with Egypt, just like the Moroccan ambassador described, without the Abraham Accords, these things are a force multiplier, not just for us, for the entire region, and we are exchanging capabilities. I always have full and tremendous respect for Arab countries, for Arab leaders, and I'm truly proud personally that I've had the opportunity to contribute through the security establishment, along with an entire system that knows this, the military and the other intel services, just how important this relationship with Arab countries are. But if there are these cracks and rifts between us and the Americans, and if our status, you'd be surprised, as a democracy, perhaps the only democracy in the Middle East, if that will be undermined, then changes will occur there as well. And I'd like to say something about the Palestinians from a perspective of a strategic analysis. We can expect a strategic threat. I don't want to call it exactly existential because I don't want to diminish from the term. The Hamas, Harakah Mukawama Islamiyah, is the Islamic resistance movement, and their vision, just like Iran, is to crush us. Hamas today, along with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they belong to the axis of evil established with Iran. They are Shiites, the Iranians, they're Sunni, but they have a common goal. We need to do everything we can to weaken Hamas and to strengthen the Palestinian Authority that, in contrast to the predecessor of Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, he's against terrorism, but people say about him that he's a terrorist. What does that mean? They'll break apart the Palestinian Authority and the civil administration, and just like the Minister Smotrich wants, that will pave the way for direct conquest. And this is a tremendous burden on the military, and along with the judicial overhaul, whether or not it be delayed or cancelled, that will completely change the nature of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. If we're not a democratic state with the Zionist vision and the Declaration of Independence and everything else we've accumulated over the years, then we are on a very bad trajectory. And I think that I must share this harsh message with you. This is actually our agenda in the conference, to give this strategic early warning. And you know, that's my opinion. People, this is the academia. We have freedom of opinions here. There could be other opinions, but the purpose of this conference, and I'm so delighted that such senior ranking officials decided to come here and share their thoughts with us. But I'd like to say to you, as my concluding message, Israel, if it won't be a democratic country, if we will have a judicial or a regime overall, it has nothing to do with reform. Reform has to do with a more efficient police, shortening verdicts. There's a lot of things that need to be reformed. But this is not a reform. This is a false name. It's a fake name. It's this malicious software invented in Israel. Khamenei is saying, wow, these Jews have gone crazy. What have they done? They invented this malicious software. It's just, of course, things I'm saying to myself. It's my imagination. It wasn't really said. But now they've come up with this malicious software that will harm themselves. Let's just sit out and wait. We need to stop this judicial overhaul. Israel, if it won't be a country that's based on its basic values, our national security will be impacted and harmed in all these aspects I've just shared with you. The good news, there are some good news. It's not all bad news. The good news is that there is a popular resistance movement that nobody could have imagined. I didn't imagine. I was in charge of military assessment for many years. If somebody would have asked me if there would be such an impressive protest, I would have said impossible. The only protest I ever saw in Israel is in the airport before Israelis board the airplanes. But all of a sudden, Israelis are getting up to change, to go against the strategic change we're trying to enforce on ourselves. So I think that the judiciary overall will stop, and there are other threats. I thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry if you're a bit uncomfortable because so many people want to attend. So I'm very proud of your attendance and proud of this conference in general. Thank you very much.